I'm Matt.
I'm Shane.
And if you like what you hear, make sure you hit that thumbs up button real hard, and make sure you subscribe to Comic Movie Marks.
And also click that little bell for all of the notifications.
Whee!
Always remember,
if Trailer Trash can do it,
anyone can do it.
Hello and welcome everyone to another Comic Movie Marks video.
The question of the year, or I guess maybe the decade, is when did comic book movies become so controversial? We're discussing that tonight.
Controversies with comic book movies. When did all of a sudden this really start picking up? It kind of gave me a little bit of a reminder when I saw an article by CBR.com saying Captain Marvel 2 won't be as controversial as the first.
I'm down to play Chris Evans. Oh wait, no, Chris Evans is Captain America. Who's Captain Marvel? I have no idea what I'm talking about.
She was a huge fan of the character in the comic.
Wow, there was quite a number of controversies around several different comic book movies this year. Almost all the comic book movies had some form of controversy about, and it just had us thinking like, why? Why all of a sudden did comic book movies have controversies?
Yeah, it's kind of odd, the fact that something was attached to every single comic book movie that came out in 2019. They ranged from political wars going back and forth. Well, that was a big part of a lot of them, to director's cuts, to even a re-release of something just to break a record. Very odd, and I wasn't sure if maybe it was because being the comic movie marks were more involved in a lot of this. A lot of more of the general audience was even familiar with some of the controversy that surrounded movies such as Captain Marvel.
Well, even with the Captain Marvel, if you look to the Twitter link of CBR.com when they posted this article, one of the first tweets that comes up by a blue checkmark said, "Only thing controversial was sad little boys who couldn't handle one Marvel movie about a female superhero and who will surely be bitching all over again when Captain Marvel 2 comes out because that's what they do." Can't imagine why people were annoyed by this movie, because you have jackasses like this making these comments. And of course, there's the other way around when it comes to this. It's funny because on both spectrums when it came to this movie annoyed us, and when we talk later on about Joker, again, both spectrums were talking about this movie in their own political world. But really, what's controversial about Captain Marvel was the movie sucked, and I just don't understand why that wasn't a bigger deal to these people.
Is that like a personal attack or something?
Another controversy followed the biggest movie of all time, Avengers Endgame, where it returned to theaters with new footage / deleted scenes just to put it over the all-time box office record.
And what did Marvel do to bring those people back into theaters? Shitty low-grade Hulk footage that wouldn't have made sense in the movie either way, and just showing the possibility of what a good Hulk could have been if they actually treated him right, and a bunch of thank yous from the cast and crew.
I just watched this with my wife. There's the part where, spoilers, Tony Stark dies. I remember seeing a scene that came out that wasn't completely finished, where all of the heroes are paying their respects to Tony after he's passed, and it's like right when he immediately dies, they're kneeling, and it was so much cooler, and that was not a part of the additional footage. They decided to try to lure everyone back into the theaters, try to get that extra box office revenue, and they decided to go with the Hulk stuff instead of the great emotional Tony Stark death.
Oh, don't forget the thank yous from the cast and crew. That was a significant point.
Oh yeah,
gaining that box office. I don't know why they just didn't leave it in theaters longer. It's not like Avatar had a traditional like 3-month run either. It was in theaters for quite a long time to build up that much box office. The fact that they had shitty Far From Good coming up, they didn't want box offices to mix. So they had to incentivize people to get them back in there. Insane to think that they went through so much and really actually added so little to a movie when they had all these possibilities, and this was the best they can do to try to break Avatar's record. Truly pathetic and undeserving. By the way, with inflation, Avatar still crushes Avengers Endgame. Which is good for people that really hate the MCU, bad for Americans.
Fucked. We're not fucked. We are totally fucked. And not just fucked, like elephant dick, pound in the ass, no reach around junk.
Despite the CBR.com article claiming that Captain Marvel had more controversy than the Joker, I personally think the Joker had way too much controversy. It was blown way out of proportion for what we ended up getting, even to the point where we had posted on Twitter the comparison of what people such as CNN thought was going to happen and what actually happened.
And of course, our favorite part of the Joker was the wars between factions. The four horse. Oh, wait, no, that's not right. This wasn't actually a good war. This was stupidity at its best between multiple sides on that swinging pendulum of death that we have in America. And in this corner, we have people saying things like, I was waiting for this movie more than anyone, but the new leaks show it is pandering to SJWs and it's politically charged for the left. They want to highlight Joker's male toxic masculinity and how white men are bad. If you don't believe me, you can do a little research.
You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
On the other side of the stupidity coin, we have unpopular opinion that Joker trailer looks like a love letter to kids who become mass shooters, and how many awards it will win is why I'm scared of men. Also, I get it. It's clever he's a comedian, but come on. It's very documented that men who can't deal with criticism or failure are a big problem / danger in the comedy world.
90% of the time, I have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about.
And then we can't forget CNN. Did they ever become a laughingstock throughout the Joker's run? Of course, lambasting the movie for several different things that it had no ties to, like the Aurora shooting victims was one, which was completely classless. The facts have stated for quite a while that the idea of Joker had nothing to do with the Aurora shootings. Of course, incels was brought up, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean anymore. And then, of course, the political nature of this movie and CNN's complete failure when it came to actually reporting on anything they want to call news. So we'll just sum it all up with this. Paul Shuri of JoeBlow.com said, so much violence. Sorry it didn't work out, CNN. Of course, showing several pictures of people dancing on those very iconic steps. Another tweet saying, with so many hit pieces against the film, so much vitriol calling it dangerous and predicting mass shootings by white incels, look at what it's really done. Inspired people of all races to celebrate fandom together.
Shuri's next tweet says, it's a wonderful f you to those who that proselytize the absolute worst out of something, made a creative passion and a picture of what happens when we show the absolute grace that art inspires rather than trying to push an agenda-driven headline. In sum, art wins.
Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill.
And then, of course, 2019 could not be talked about without release the director's cut. It was very apparent this year that somehow directors lost the capabilities of actually editing their own movies this year. And there were several issues with different comic book movies, and we'll chuck Star Wars into this as well. In one article by Den of Geek, a new report suggests that making a new Hellboy movie wasn't the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was, okay. Basically talking about the Neil Marshall cut. It turns out it's actually a producer cut. It's not even his. He didn't even get final cut say. If there actually even is a Marshall cut, who actually knows? Because the way the studio dicked him around, who even knows if there actually is a Neil Marshall cut of Hellboy? From what I gathered in our comment section about Hellboy, because we're not very knowledgeable about the comics, they basically stuffed 8 storylines into one movie. So I'm not sure any director's cut could save that, but I will never say never because we all know director's cuts are better.
Then there was the glorious X-Men Dark Phoenix Kingberg cut was leaked online and scrolls were confirmed.
For those who don't know, X-Men Dark Phoenix was cut down from 2 movies to 1 movie, and the bad guys in this were supposed to be Skrulls. And of course, it kind of ties back again to some of the controversy behind Captain Marvel, because by the time this movie was ready to come out, and it was supposed to come out before Captain Marvel, Disney at the time already bought Fox. X-Men Dark Phoenix was supposed to come out in 2018, and then it got pushed surprisingly very far back beyond Captain Marvel after Disney purchased Fox. Dark Phoenix was neutered from the start. Then you have Simon Kinberg, who has been heavily involved in a lot of the X-Men movies as a writer and producer, now first-time director. Obviously, a lot of things went down with this movie that was unfortunate and changed a lot of what this movie's supposed to be.
In the article, it quotes Cyclops actor Ty Sheridan, who confirmed that the shape-shifting aliens were the original villains. He's quoted, "It's really hard for me to remember what the ending of this movie is. laughs. Originally, it was scripted that Charles and Scott go to the UN because, man, I'm totally going to mess this up. They go to the UN because they're going to try to tell the president that, hey, we're under attack by aliens, and now they've captured Jean Grey, or, you know, whatever it is we're going to tell them. And then Jean comes down in the front of the UN and there is this huge battle between the guards at the UN and Jean Grey, and all the guards turn out to be Skrulls. And then Jean and Scott is fighting Skrulls in the fountain. He gets thrown into the fountain in front of the UN, and then Jean comes down and basically fights all of the Skrulls off, and then blasts back off into space. She basically says goodbye to Scott and Charles, and then it's all over, I guess.
I have to go now. My planet needs me.
Wow. And then we'll skip over to the JJ cut, or what I originally called it, the Abrams cut, which I think sounds a lot better. The existence of a JJ cut is very hard. As positive as many journalists are that there is no such thing as a JJ cut and that it will never come out, which I do kind of believe them on that a JJ cut would never come out, because Disney really doesn't do director's cuts. Why Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker director J.J. Abrams will likely never work with Disney again. It kind of gives a tell-all about how J.J. was treated, and he had a shorter production time to get Rise of the Skywalker done. Is there a possibility that even with shorter time, does he have a better edit of the movie? The process that we've understood so far, that there's always going to be a director's cut and then there's a theatrical cut. And a lot of the times the directors have to whittle things down. Now, how complete it could be, who knows? Only JJ and some people at Disney would know, and this likely will probably fall, unfortunately, to the wayside, like a lot of these director's cuts do.
At some point, I hope that studios decide, hey, we can maybe interest a lot of fans in releasing alternate cuts onto our streaming services, as we've talked about for another famous or infamous cut. Hopefully at some point they decide to use some of this, but I agree, I don't know if an Abrams cut would ever come out. It cracks me up that writers are so confident that one doesn't even exist, which also sounds super familiar.
One thing I want to point out, Twitter thread that I will have in the description, and I encourage you all to go read it, but it's from Mike Cecchini, Cecchini. He's the editor-in-chief of Den of Geek. It's a very long thread of him talking about how studios are manipulating people now, especially journalists, and lying directly to their faces. The coveted source isn't even reliable anymore, and you don't even know if what you're being told by these sources is actually good information. So it's a very interesting thread, and I encourage you to go in there, where he talks about the struggle it's becoming lately to be a site like this and actually having integrity, being right. And so it's a very, very interesting thread, and I encourage you to read it. So the fact that so many journalists are so confident about things just proves they haven't learned anything, especially when we talk about our next movie, the Release the Snyder Cut, as I've dubbed it, Z-Day, November 17th, 2019, where Release the Snyder Cut trended on Twitter with almost 1 million tweets and hit a spike well beyond the actual marketing Justice League by WB, where a couple cast and crew members said, #release the Snyder Cut. What a momentous day November 17th, 2019 was when it comes to releasing an actual director's cut vision.
A day that will truly live in infamy. We had contributions from several of the stars, Jason Momoa, Gal Gadot, Ben Affleck, Ray Fisher, additional supporters that were out there, and then of course the fans that were getting Release the Snyder Cut trending, and it was a fantastic, joyous, and fun day.
Something that could set a precedent, and I still say to this day that when the Snyder Cut is released, it will be a precedent. I'm not sure if it'll completely revolutionize the business, depending on how well it's received, could change a lot of studios' minds about director's cuts, and what those possibilities and capabilities of those cuts are to fans and dedicated film watchers. What a controversial year 2019 was when it came to comic book movies. I don't know why. Very odd times we're in. I don't know if this will continue in 2020. What a time. So that ends our episode, guys. It'll be down in the description and with a link. Help us out there if you can. Just sent out today some official cool swag for our patrons. So you're definitely not just paying for nothing. We definitely try to incorporate you in things. They also got some blooper reels that we sent to them. It's not a complete nothing burger. It actually has some purpose to it, and you get cool coffee mugs and possibly pillows. Maybe small ones, depending on price.
Super small ones. That's what she said.
Another good one! You're on fire!
In case I don't see you.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.